Everybody, welcome back. We'll continue with the gas chromatography. This is the third lecture in the series of lectures on gas chromatography. In the last lecture, we have seen the instrumentation diagram. We saw about the carrier gases. We saw about the sample injection, and also we saw the column temperature. Now, in this lecture, we'll consider the detectors which are used in gas chromatography. The detectors which are there, they will produce electrical signals proportional to the concentration of the components of the solutes, components of the solutes in the sample. The detector, there are two types. You have got differential detectors and the regular detectors which are not differential ones. The signals which are obtained from the detectors, they are amplified and recorded as peaks at intervals on the chromatograph. Whatever chromatogram you are getting, the chromatographic output you are getting, that will come out as peaks, and the signals which are there, they are recorded as peaks as per the order of the solutes which are coming out from the column and reaching the detector. Number of detectors have been used in chromatography. More than dozen type have been used, and we will be discussing some of the widely used ones. There are detectors, special spectral detectors like mass spectrometers and FTIR. These are the detectors which will be covered under the topic of hyphenated methods. These are more advanced detectors, so we'll consider them separately under the hyphenated methods. Now, before we start with the actual detectors, let us see what an ideal detector what are the characteristics of an ideal detector. The, the first characteristic is adequate sensitivity. If you are having a small size sample, then the detector should be able to detect it. If you are having a bigger size sample, then also it should be able to detect it. So sensitivity of the detector should be adequate for the sample. Whatever sample you are analyzing, there should be a suitable detector with the adequate sensitivity to analyze the sample. The second point is the detector should have good stability and reproducibility. The detectors should give you stable output and reproducible output. If you do the analysis today and if you do that analysis tomorrow on the same sample, the output should come same. So then only you can say the detector is a reproducible detector. Then the third point is a detector should have a linear response to solutes that extends over several order of magnitude. Now, what it means, suppose you have a sample in which the solutes have concentration or the quantity of the each component is say 10 is to minus 7 gram, then the detector should be able to detect it. You can have another sample where the quantity of the solutes is 10 is to minus 8 gram, then the detector should also able to detect it. If the quantity is less, the signal will be smaller, the peak will be smaller. If the quantity is more, the peak will be larger. But whatever output you are getting, that the detector should give you a linear response. More the quantity of the solutes in the mixture, larger will be the peak, and less the quantity of the solutes in the mixture, then the peaks will be smaller. So several orders of magnitude the linear response should be there. It should not be that at higher sample quantities the detector will give you a signal, but at lower quantities it will not give, and that is not an ideal detector. The fourth point is a temperature range ranging from room temperature to at least 400 degrees. That means you should be able to operate the detector from room temperature to at least 400 degrees. We know that in the earlier lecture we have seen that you can have programmed dilution, that is you are gradually increasing the temperature of the column or the oven from room temperature to higher temperatures. Now you can have samples where you have to heat even up to 400 degrees. So the detector, whatever you are having, should be capable of analyzing the sample even at 400 degrees. Some of the other properties: the detector should have a short response time that is independent of the flow rate. Short response time means as soon as the components of the mixture reach the detector should give you a signal. It should not be like a tube light that it takes time to get light up. It should give the response immediately. As soon as the solutes come into the detector, you should get the signal. You should have a short response time. The detector should not be destructive of the sample. The detector should be non-destructive of sample. That means after the analysis, if you want to, after the separation of the sample, if you still want to study further, then the sample should not get destroyed in the detector. Then only you will be able to analyze it further. But many of the detectors, they are destructive. The detector should be of high reliability and ease of use. Now, detector should be highly reliable and easy to operate. Any non-technical person or a person who has got limited knowledge of GC should also be able to use it if he is trained a little bit. Also, the detector should not get damaged by use of a non-trained person or a less skilled person. So it should be highly reliable and easy to use. Then the next property is similarity in response to all solutes, or alternatively highly selective response towards one or more class of compounds. What it means: whatever may be the sample, a particular detector should be able to detect it. Or if you are having specific group of compounds, then you can have specific detectors for them. Say for example, if you are having sulfur compounds, then you can have a detector which will respond only to sulfur compounds. You may have another detector which may be sensitive only to nitrogen and phosphorus. So in that case, that detector will respond only to that detector will give you a highly selective response. Either the detector should give you a highly selective response, or it should be able to detect all the types of compounds which you are analyzing. So these are some of the properties an ideal detector should have: adequate sensitivity, good stability and reproducibility, a linear response to solutes that extend over several orders of magnitude, temperature range from room temperature to at least 400 degrees, a short response time that is independent of flow rate, non-destructive of sample, high reliability and ease of use, similarity in response to all solutes, or alternatively highly selective response towards one or more class of compounds. Now you cannot, these are the properties of an ideal detector. It's very obvious that you cannot have an ideal detector in real life. Some of the detectors may have some properties, some of the detectors may have other properties, but if it's very rare that you will find a detector which has got all these 8 properties which are required for an ideal detector. So it depends on what sample you are analyzing and how much sensitivity you want and how much is your cost you are willing to pay for that. You will get a detector according to that, or you can use a detector according to that. Now let us see some of the detectors which have been used in GC. The first one is very popular, which is the flame ionization detector, or FID. The second one is the thermal conductivity detector. This is TCD, and it is a universal detector, that is, it can analyze any compound. Then the third one is sulfur chemiluminescence detector. So as the name suggests, this is useful only for your sulfur compounds, for the detection of mixtures of sulfur compounds. The next one is electron capture detector. Now electron capture detector is mainly useful for compounds which are having electronegative elements. So if you want to analyze halogen compounds or any compound which has got electronegative elements, then you can make use of electron capture detector, ECD. Then the next one is thermionic detector. Thermodynamic detectors, they are useful for specifically for nitrogen and phosphorus compound. So this is TID. Then you have atomic emission detectors, also flame photometric detectors and photoionization detectors. There are other detectors also, and the more advanced one are the mass spectrometer and the FTIR. That, as I said, we'll be studying under your hyphenated methods. When we deal with the topic of hyphenated methods, we'll be using those detectors, IR and mass spectrometers. Now, in this list of the detectors which I have written here, we'll be studying in details the first five of them: FID, TCD, SCD, ECD, and TID. Now, if you get a question on detectors used in GC, you can give the properties of an idle detector, give the names of all these detectors, and describe any two of them. It's a long answer question. Now, let's see the first one. The first one is the flame ionization detector. Now, this is the most widely used and generally applicable detector which is used in gas chromatography. In this, whatever is the output from column is mixed with hydrogen and air, and it is ignited. You know that hydrogen is highly inflammable, and when you mix it with air and ignite it, you will get a flame, and inside that the column effluent will get vaporized. They will get pyrolyzed and produce ions and electrons. These ions and electrons can conduct electricity through the flame. We'll see the diagram and there I'll explain you properly. The potential of few hundred volts is applied across the burner tip and the collector electrode, and you get current due to the ions and electrons which are formed by the ignition of the compounds which are there in the eluent. Current is proportional to the number of reduced carbon atoms. More the carbon atoms present in the compound, more will be the current produced. Now let's see the diagram which will make you understand better the flame ionization detector. Now I have given here a very simplified diagram. If you see in the books, the diagrams are fairly complicated. Here I have drawn a simplified diagram for flame ionization detector. You can see at the bottom there are two inlets. One is the column effluent inlet, the other is the hydrogen inlet, and also there is another inlet which is air inlet for air. So these all the air, hydrogen, and the column effluent, they will mix it. They will mix up inside this FID, and there is an electrical igniter that can ignite the flame. Hydrogen and air will combine to form a flame, and the column effluent will come in, and they will also get ionized. The column will get the effluent column effluent will get ionized, and ions are produced, and these ions which are there, they are positively charged, and there is a collector. You can see a collector above the flame. Now the ions get collected in the collector, so that is why it is called a collector, because it collects the ions. And you'll find that there is a chimney above it. That chimney will through the chimney, the whatever is a residue will go out. There is a electrical connection, a negative electrical connection, and a positive electrical connection through which high potential is applied, and the current flows because of the ions and the electrons which are produced in the flame. Now whatever current is produced is very small, in the 10 is to minus 11 minus 12 amperes. So that current is to be amplified, and once it is amplified, you can get the output, the chromatogram, as each component of the mixture comes into the flame. It will give you a peak. It will give you its own ions and electrons, and you will get the current for each peak. So you will have a plot of current versus volume of the mobile phase in the graph. So you will get a peak when a compound is coming in, a peak in the current value when a compound comes in, and once it is gone, the next compound, till the next compound comes, you will get a baseline. When the next compound comes, you will get a second peak, third peak, and so on. Okay. So this is a flame ionization detector. It's a very popular detector and very useful. But you can see that some compounds, they will not give you any current in this. Let us see what are the compounds. Like carbonyl group if you are having in the compound, alcoholic group if you are having, amino group if you are having, halogen compounds if you are having, they'll give you weak or no signal. Also water, carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, they do not interfere. So if they are not interfering, it's good for us. So you can use if you are having a pollutant sample, if you want to detect pollutants in a water sample, environmental water sample, then water, since water does not give any signal in FID, in flame ionization detector, it will not interfere. Similarly, even if carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, etc. are present in the water sample, they will not interfere. So FID is very good for detecting pollutants in water sample. FID exhibits a high sensitivity, large linear response, and low noise. And that is the advantage of it. That it is quite sensitive, very highly sensitive, and it gives a linear response. Linear response means more concentration of the sample, more quantity of the sample, more will be the signal. That is, the height of the peaks will be larger, and if the quantity is less, the peaks will be smaller. The flame ionization detector is rugged and easy to use, and the only problem is with that it is destructive of sample. The sample gets destroyed because ions are produced, and ions and electrons are produced. So after the analysis in the after the detection in the detector, the sample will get destroyed. The carrier gas which can be used are hydrogen, helium, neon, argon, krypton. Okay, mainly helium is used, but even hydrogen also can be used. In fact, if you are using hydrogen as the carrier gas, then there is no need to add more hydrogen, because this hydrogen itself will act as a source of the flame. Okay, so that is all about your flame ionization detector, and we have seen the various detectors names. In the next lecture we'll see the remaining four which we have to see, that is TCD, SCD, ECD, and TID. This lecture we have seen FID. We'll continue this in the next lecture. You can, if you want to see the previous lectures, you can see the playlist, or you can see the link below of the previous lectures in the description. Thank you very much.